on the same journey. Dream come true for me too, to be able to do this kind of stuff. You should meet this guy. You should meet this guy. Oh, hi.
Get around all this, I'm ready to go stuff a backwards. That'd be crazy.
These guys. All right, so if you guys want to, if you haven't already, scan that QR code. You can watch the presentation on your phone by downloading it. Or if you guys want to, save this at home, go back over it. Feel free to send me a message online if you guys want to discuss any of these things in more detail. All right, let's get started, yeah? Yeah? All right. Thanks for coming out, guys. So today we're going to be talking about quality of light, and we'll touch on quantity of light as well, but why plants use, or how plants use photons for quality of light, and how a quality spectrum makes all the difference in grow light and grow light design, and how to maximize yield through that process. I'll also be talking about return on investment. So when you're looking to put in 100 lights in California or 330 lights in Missouri, your electrical cost difference equals about the same just because of the cost of where you're growing. But what is the return on that investment and how to utilize light? So if you guys have questions while we're going through this, just raise your hand like that, and we'll just openly talk about it. And I think it's a fun way to do this. So what is light? How do we measure it? And who measured it in the beginning? There's Dr. Keith McCree in the 1970s. He measured the sun's output and the average plant response. And that graph looks a little something like this. So at the bottom there you can see the chlorophyll receptors and where they react in the PAR curve. So this is called the PAR spectrum. And it's essentially the photosynthetic active radiation of light within a spectrum. These days, we've moved to an extended PAR spectrum, or also called ePAR. ePAR runs from the 400 nanometer range to the 750 nanometer range, where before it was running at about, the 400 to the 700 range. Now the total range goes way below 300, and it goes up to 1200 when you're talking about RI. Infrared and UV on the other side. So this is photosynthetic active radiation here. I just realized he opened up the other presentation, so I'm going to skip a couple of slides and we'll go over that. Anyway, so photosynthetic active radiation, you can see the red range here in the 600s and the blue range in the 400s, and we'll discuss how plants use that light in that range. Do you guys have any questions about what just basic PAR is? Okay, it's just the color of light that we, see, we get from the sun, and then we measure in LED. All right, so extended PAR, Bruce Bugbee kind of brought this to people's attention. He started to realize that when testing plants, that plants react on a larger range than what was currently studied. Thanks for coming. Come join. So why does color matter and energy of light? You can see the UV light, violet in the 400 nanometer range there, UV being at the 320 up to like 360, is a shorter wavelength. So that light's going to have a lot more energy to it versus a longer wavelength like red light. So with red light, you get a lot of light bouncing around the canopy and penetrating lower to the canopy. With that more intense indigo blue range, you get direct penetration. Now plants and the photocells of plants react differently to that. So with green light, we see plants and they're green, so we get that bounce back of light. Thanks for joining, guys. And then with green light, it also penetrates the mesophyll layer So it goes deep inside the plant, but too much green light can affect plants and cause light burn. So it's really about hitting the photoreceptors, the chlorophyll A and B receptor, which I'll get into in a little bit here. So how do humans see light? That is where we see light. We use the green range and the red range just a little bit. Mainly in the green range is where we receive light through 3 cones in our eyes. So plants are using light on the outside of what we see, and we're using it in the inside of the PAR spectrum there. So the absorption spectrum and photosynthesis, this is where, can you guys see my cursor up there? Or is it just, there's no cursor, okay. So in the blue range right there, this is the chlorophyll A and B will be peaking on this side and on this side. So it uses both sides of the spectrum. But you can see for a plant's response, it doesn't really need a lot of green. The green is bouncing back and the green is penetrating. But when you're looking at growing plant mass and producing large flowers, you're looking at hitting the outsides of the PAR spectrum there. So we have chlorophyll A and B receptors, and then we have carotenoid and anthocyanin receptors. And you can see the purple line there is anthocyanin production. We only need a little bit of green light to produce the colors and the coloration, terpenes, and that part of the plant. Now when we're talking about blue light, that's going to be your leaf and your stem material. And red light is going to be where you get your density from. Does anybody have a question so far? No? So, to penetration, reflectance, and absorbance, green is important on some level to get deeper into the canopy, but a lot of that light is not being used, it's being reflected back. So when we create a targeted PAR spectrum, what we're looking to do is to actually target the different ranges in a plant's response. There's different types of plants. Leafy greens, they like a lot more blue light, and that's because we're creating a lot of lettucey material. I don't think that's the proper term for it, but we're creating a lot of leafy green material. So with that, you know, some people think that a lot more blue is important, but what it's doing is it's just creating a lot of leaf material, and it's not using that to boost the density of the plant. So what we do is we look to create a larger spectrum in the red range, which will increase the Emerson enhancement effect, which I'll get into in just a sec. You can see the colors here where the anthocyanin is right in that green range. And so that's your flavonoids, your terpenes, and your nice pretty purple colors that come out of cannabis. So the Emerson enhancement effect was studied by Robert Emerson, and he noticed that in the 642 range to 692 range, where you can see that peak inside of the red, those two peaks right there, causes quanta excitation. So it's essentially exciting the molecule early and stepping up the energy level as it excites that molecule so that you're getting a faster photosynthetic response and you're getting more out of the light using a quality of light rather than just quantity of light. So when we think of quality of light, we can think of it as the kale and broccoli of light. When we think of quantity of light, we can think of it as our 10 milkshakes and 5 hamburgers. So we'll feel full when we eat 10 milkshakes and 5 hamburgers, or 10 hamburgers and 5 milkshakes, but we're not getting what we need out of that food. If we just eat kale and broccoli, we're going to feel pretty full. We're going to get our minerals and our nutrients out of it. We're going to feel better, but we might not feel, stuffed full. So there's definitely a balance between your quantity of light and your quality of light. Quality of light taking a precedence over quantity of light. So there's two types of plants. There's C3 plants and C4 plants. C3 plants are 95% of plants on the planet, and C4 plants are the other 5% of plants. C4 plants are things like corn, and you can see at the bottom there where it says C4, how the photoreceptor cells are stacked is in a circular pattern. And C4 plants will use photosynthesis in 2 cells, so it photosynthesizes a little bit differently. With the C3 leaf, the photoreceptors are acting in the top here. And if you have too much green light, it's penetrating through down to here, which is what causes that light burn. So what we want to do is capture that light and allow it to energize properly and to be used for energy. So photosynthesis on a basic level, you know, you have your basic curve, but how much blue light, how much red light are we looking to use in order to essentially give you guys more yield, more density out of your plants? You'll notice that on a lot of spectrums that blue peak is as high as the red peak. In that case, it's actually going to squat the plants down a little bit. It's going to mess with the leaf and the stem length. And then your red here, on some spectrums, you'll notice that it just peaks directly in the 660. And with our spectrum, it actually starts in the 642 all the way out to the 692, which increases that Emerson enhancement effect on the PAR max. And then the green is minimized so that it doesn't cause light burn. So we've had growers grow plants all the way up to the top of the light just to test it out. I typically recommend, you know, being at least 6 to 8 inches away when you finish, just because our bars are 4.5 inches apart, which allows light to cross over on the bars and evenly distribute. But having a light that doesn't cause light burn means that you can grow and utilize your vertical canopy a lot more. With quantum boards, instead of a linear extrusion design, quantum boards you have to be 18 inches away. All the diodes are packed into one tiny little board. It creates a lot of heat, and you have to be far enough away that you get a good crossover in order to essentially get even light on your canopy. So a big thing for us is not only making sure that you have a really good spectrum, but that the light is even and distributed on the plant. Over here is activation of the photosystem 2, which is your far red. Does anybody have a question here? Yes? All right, so C3 and C4 plants. Are you guys all growing? Some of you guys growing? Mostly cannabis, anything else? Some rice, some potatoes. So what we do is we target C3 plants mainly. C3 plants don't show a Kranz anatomy, which is that circular pattern that you saw. C4 plants use that Kranz anatomy and photosynthesize on 2 cells. Our lights would work to grow corn if you needed to, but the sun is going to work a lot better to grow corn. And if you consider how much corn you have to grow for how many ears of corn you get with indoor lighting, typically, you know, maximizing your yield on a high product and a high dollar crop is going to be important with indoor growing, where I don't know how many pounds of lettuce it takes to equal 1 pound of cannabis on a dollar level. So what we do is we really concentrate on producing the highest quality crops and the best density and the yield for those crops. So this is the PAR Max 8. I think a few of you guys have stopped by the booth and seen the light there. The PAR Max 8 is a 4x4 light and covers a 4x4 tent perfectly. It covers 5x5 for veg, raise it a little bit higher, and then you're able to use this spectrum all the way through a plant's life cycle. So from clone to vegetative to flower, and even re-veg if you wanted to. You could use this light through the whole spectrum. And then the blue to red, again, being balanced is very important. So you'll see in the center right there of the column that there's actual percentages that we weigh everything out at. So UV being 0.13, there's a little bit of UV spectrum in there. There's a little bit of IR spectrum, but if you look at our red spectrum, it's 49.84% of the light. It's almost 50% of the energy that's coming out is activating that Emerson enhancement effect. The far red light is at 6.47. So if you add that up, you're at essentially 57-ish% is in red light with a minimized amount of green. A lot of the Samsung diodes push green really heavily. These are Philips LumiLED diodes, and these ones specifically have a pink hue to them that allows us to hit that spectrum. So intuitive design, you can see that this is a little bit different of a spectrum here. Now, it took me about 150 different iterations on a computer program to come up with this exact spectrum. This is for more so commercial grows, really high ceilings where intensity needs to be adjusted. The PowerMax has a beautiful spectrum, and it's made for tent grows and low ceilings so that you guys can maximize yield in a tent. A lot of home growers can maximize their yield. In a commercial situation, what we see is that it takes a lot more time to adjust the light and make those fine details, fine tuning to it. So with commercial, we want to hang that light high and then blast it with 80%, 90%, 100% of the output on the intensity. We also are activating the photosystem 2 here in the far red a little bit more. And that's for genetic tuning, for specific genetics that work a little bit better with one spectrum or work a little bit better with another spectrum. Again, you can see that the blue and the peak on the red are pretty even to what the other spectrum was. So minimizing the amount of blue, less green, and a lot of red. And then this one, you can see the red is 43.9%, far red 6.9%, so total red is 50.8%. So over half of the energy that you are pulling from the wall and putting into the diode and projecting onto the plant is being used for photosynthetic reaction. Do you guys know what PPFD is? So PPFD is photosynthetic photon flux density. I think a good way to remember it is distance for the D versus density. So how far away your light is hanging is how much light is going to hit that spot. Now, the inverse square law applies to lights like this, where it's coming out of a sphere. And as you increase your distance, you're going to decrease the amount of energy that's coming from that sphere. So if we were to picture one single diode, that would evenly distribute all the way down and lose its energy as that photon is traveling, and the amount of photons that are hitting that space. When it comes to linear design, though, and we're looking at two channels, that inverse square law doesn't apply the same to a linear extrusion. So the key to our intuitive design, the spacing on the bars, and trying to make sure that your canopy is completely even, the light is received evenly on that canopy, is to balance that out and to test our PPFD ratios for how much light is crossing over in between those bars. Yeah, it's a mouthful to say. Photosynthetic photon flux density. So a lot of people call it they'll ask me, they'll come up and say, what's your PAR? And they think that they're referring to this. They think that they're referring to a PAR chart or a PPFD chart. So PAR is the spectrum. So it's photosynthetic active radiation. That's what's coming out. But the PAR spectrum is really your color, and your PPFD chart is the intensity of the light. So when we talk about quality of light, we refer to it as PAR spectrum. And when we talk about quantity of light, we refer to it as the PPFD chart. Now, I look at these things all day, and I talk about this all day. So it took me, a little while when I was getting into lights a long time ago, and remembering these things and what they mean. But really, what you want to look at is your quality of light. Is it burning the plants? Is it too much light for that plant? And then, what's my output? Am I getting, 30% more density by giving this plant quality of light am I making an extra $900 on every pound that I sell for $3,000 because I'm doing this and giving it a quality of light versus just blasting it with a bunch of light and thinking that the plant's going to take to that. And then you go and you get to the finish of your crop and you look at the tops, and all of a sudden your tops are burned and roasted, and all that work that you spent to try to get a perfect crop doesn't come out the same. So we want to make it really easy for growers, for new growers, and then for commercial growers that want to take their game to the next level and produce the best stuff. Especially people that are working with genetics. The guy back there, that when you're running those genetics, that you get the same production. That if you continue to breed with those genetics, that you're getting even and consistent results all the time. That there's not a lot of degradation on the diodes. So this is the PPFD chart. We tested in-house. Again, the linear extrusion design creates an even canopy of photon distribution. So you guys can see through this color map here how even that light is just distributed. And this is in a 4x4. Any questions? Okay. So I think the important part is return on your investment. Make your money count. And when you're investing in a grow light, that what you put in is not only what you get out, but you continue to get that out of it for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Now when we're working with HPS lights, in the past as growers, we had to replace that bulb every 6 months to a year, and by replacing that bulb, we're hopefully getting the same results every single time, right? But we're also paying for 1,000 watts of energy versus like 650 watts with an LED. Comparatively, I used to have to turn mine up to turbo 1,150, which means I'm burning that bulb out faster. I'm getting a lot more heat out of that bulb. I'm using it in the wintertime mainly as a heater versus using that energy to the plant and to the canopy. And when we replace a bulb, the cheapest I can find bulbs right now, just for numbers sake, is $58 a bulb for a 12-pack. I don't know a lot of home growers that are buying 12 packs unless they have 12 lights at a time. I used to pay something like $120 a bulb back in the day, and there was sometimes no way that I could continue to buy a bulb every 9 months or every year. Something happens, you go through a run, you have bugs. Well, all that wasted energy to that light and to that bulb is now kind of just being tossed out. So the thing with LEDs is that you want to make sure that your LED binning is a top bin. And what happens is when they produce LEDs, they put a little flash of light through them and they test these LEDs really quickly. And the LEDs are stripped out and then separated into different bins. Now by top binning, you can imagine a circle with a quadrant. You're choosing the LED within that quadrant that you're saying is the exact same every single time, and some of them are produced outside the quadrant. So by top-bin diodes, if you produce a light today and then produce a light with the same top-bin diodes that are produced exactly the same way, 2 years from now you're going to get that same color spectrum. You're going to get that same light, same production. With LEDs, some of them are overdriven is what we've seen. We've seen a lot of customers switch over to our products because they could only run their light for like a year or 2 years. They were running too hot. They burned out the LEDs, so then they came to us. Making sure that that light is produced properly and doesn't fail and will continue to run for 5 or 7 years is very important. Now, if the LED is driven, meaning the amount of energy it's given, is on the lower end of things and it's driven in a sweet spot, as we call it, then that diode's going to last a lot longer. So if you think of diodes, losing 1% in 10 years versus losing 20% of its energy, 1% is an easy adjustment. You can drop that light just a little bit closer. So you're not having to spend any money, having to go get a new light. You can just bring that light a little bit closer to the canopy. Now, if it's losing 20% and you're in a commercial situation, that's a huge difference. You're going to lose in your production. So we make sure that everything is produced the same with top bin diodes, and that all the manufacturing comes through. We actually place the diodes ourselves in our facility in Maryland Heights. And we make sure that everything comes out that line perfectly, and then we put it through a triple quality assurance check process after it comes off that line. So nothing goes into a light unless it's perfect before and after, and then gets tested before we actually ship the light out. So here's some numbers. Have any of you guys lived in California before? So this is some numbers from Los Angeles. You can see in the top right where it says electrical cost in kilowatts. It's 23 cents a kilowatt. It's pretty expensive. Out here in St. Anne, we're looking at about 9 cents a kilowatt. So this is an example of a grower investing in 100 fixtures, and their electrical savings switching from HPS they've got their HPSs set, turboed up, blasting as much light as they can. They have to replace bulbs on it. And this is a real grow in Los Angeles. So the electrical cost, the lamp cost is all calculated in here. The energy savings on air conditioning is not calculated in here, but typically you're saving about 40 to 50% on your AC in a commercial situation. For our tent growers, since our lights run so cool, between 4 and 10 degrees above ambient. So if you keep your house at 70 degrees or 72 degrees, your tent's going to be about 80, 82 degrees, which is perfect for cannabis. This is just strictly switching from 100 lights of HPS to 100 lights of the Parmax 8, and their electrical savings is $56,203 on 100 lights. That's a good chunk of money that you can put back into your business and continue to build your business and make the proper investments, and maybe a trimming machine, maybe your nutrients, maybe your tables, your ability to pay people good wages, and continue to do that. So if you consider, you have to put new bulbs in those HPSs every, how many months? 6 to 9 months, yeah. So, it's a lot of work climbing up, putting ladders over the plants, pulling those bulbs out and switching them versus just running your LED nice and even. So here's some yield results. Now again, yield comes down to your genetics a lot of the time. You're looking at, starting top down, your quality of light, your genetics, and then your nutrients and what you're giving it. They all play a role into each other. CO2 as well will boost your production. So this is a 1.6 to a 2.24 pound change. Their genetics are pushing between 1.6 pounds and 1.8 pounds. Now some growers push 3 pounds or 5 pounds depending on the genetics and what they're running. This is just strictly switching to Dazor. And at 100 lights, we're looking at a total profit difference of $163,456. So that's their revenue gain. And their total revenue is $500,000, $572,096. That's a yield gain per fixture of $1,635. And this is switching HPS to LED. And so when you have $1,635 extra off of 2 cycles in a year, and this is conservative numbers. Some growers can push 3 or 4 cycles of flowering in a year. So this is just to say, if you make sure that you have 2 perfect runs, here's what your difference is going to be. So these lights in California are taking them 3.6 months to pay off their investment. So it's a pretty quick return to invest in something that's guaranteed for 5 years with a warranty on it. And their total profit for 4 years after this production and projecting their production is $1,857,656.85. So this is paying off their initial investment, subtracting the electrical costs, and just looking at those main factors as their total revenue. And again, at 2 crops a year, incredibly conservative. So this is 100 lights in flower and 10 lights in veg. The 10 lights in veg that are running on an 18-hour cycle versus a 12-hour cycle, they're saving $9,822 a year off of 10 lights just in electrical savings. So even though they're not pulling any flower from that, that's just electricity off of 10 lights in California. Now again, California, and specifically this case in Los Angeles, they have incredibly high price on kilowatt per hour. So if we're looking at Missouri, you guys can see that this is a LED to LED comparison. So the LEDs that they're using currently are 1,000 watt LEDs. They are only able to turn these LEDs up to about 85–90% based on their ceiling height. They're burning the plants. The spectrum it's a really good spectrum, but it's got too much green and it's causing it to burn the plants. So they can only turn the lights up so high. And the lights that they're using are a lot more expensive than our lights as well. So 330 lights is $49,000 in electrical savings, switching from a 1,000 watt LED to our 650 watt LED. Now, if you look back at this California one, going from HPS to LED, at 100 lights, it's $56,000. In Missouri, 330 lights is almost $50,000. So where you grow makes a big difference on your calculated energy savings. In places like California, depending on who your local electrical provider is out here, Ameren, you can get rebates by switching on a commercial scale from HPS to LED, which help to offset your initial costs, and then obviously you're going to be saving money on your electrical costs, you're going to be gaining money on your yield, and then your longevity of your yield. And it's nice to grow one plant and be able to produce it the same way every single time. You grow up a mother, you take cuts and you put it in a room, and you're selling to a dispensary or something, then you want that to be the same thing that looks like that bag of peel every single time, and it produces the same flower every single time. So a lot of the times for home growers, there's home growers that want to be the best at their craft. There's a few of them out there, and they want the stinkiest stuff. They want the best stuff. They want the tastiest flower. They want to go pop a jar open and show their friends and go, hey, check this out. I started with HPS a long time ago, and it sucked to have to go through a run and get larvier buds, something that wasn't, it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And I'd go and change the bulb out, and I'd get a little bit closer to it. But growing with LEDs, you're seeing that density, you're seeing that yield, you get the flavor, the terpenes, and then you get the coloration that happens in that anthocyanin production area. So here's the yield results on 330 lights. Now, switching from HPS for the other guys, I think it's a 30 or 40% on the California difference. For this one, this is a super conservative change because they are already running top genetics. They're already pushing about 3 pounds per light. This is only with a 2.5% increase in yield. But even with that 2.5% increase in yield and the electrical cost savings, the 4-year profit is $9 million. And I think that kind of speaks for itself, that even with the slightest amount of change, that you can still push for really high numbers. So the additional profit year 1, meaning they've paid off the lights, is $143,246. I don't know, if any of you guys are running commercial facilities, but if you are $143,000 extra with paying off your investment, can do a lot of things. I mean, it could buy somebody a G-Wagon, that's great, but it could also pay for, you know, an extra 10 or 12 employees at the facility, you know, and paying them a fair wage, which I think is important when it comes to cannabis. So we're looking at a revenue of $2,490,000, and this again is comparing our PAR Max 8 650 watt to a 1,000 watt competitor LED. You guys have questions there? Comments, concerns, anything at all? Okay. Correct. The Flux Max is in development right now. So this is just comparing to the PAR Max 8, which is using that horticultural diode, the Philips Lumiled. The Flux Max is using 3 diodes, which is boosting the far red, a little bit more of the peak in the 660, and then the white. I can't release right now what diodes we're using because we're working with a big company, and when we do release that, we're going to be working with them to show that we're producing with their diodes as well. So that's some internal testing that I'm doing. After you can find me, I'll show you the pictures of in the shop where the thing is turned upside down and then 30 feet up on the ceiling. You know, it's lighting an area bigger than that whole square right here, like this whole area. It's pretty impressive, but for tent growers, you know, they don't need to be pushing 960 watts or 1,000 watts. They just need really good production and to not burn the plant and be able to keep their temperatures down. I think that's a really big thing for growers that are in California, Arizona, Missouri. I mean, man, it gets 110 degrees out here, you know? So that slight difference in cooling and being able to tune your tent and keep your VPD, your vapor pressure deficit, locked in, I think it's really important for growers. So lighting design, you guys have seen, I think most of you guys, anyone here, have you seen our lights yet? Okay, come on by the booth, check them out after if you want to. I don't think I've seen your face yet. So my name's Aaron. So lighting design, the big thing for us is making sure that these lights last. Again, that they run cool to temperature, that they're built really strong and sturdy. So with our PAR Max 4, you can pick up the lights, the PAR Max 4, the PAR Max 8, you can pick up the lights by the bar itself, move it around. So we have some videos online of our manufacturing process. If any of you guys locally want to come by and check out, you know, how we do it, the screw guns that, you know, we use are set to exact rivets and the torque. Everything is riveted in, and then everything is UL tested and UL listed. So when we tested this for wet location rating, we ran the thing under a shower head for 3 hours to make sure that, you know, it could pass that testing there. The big thing is that you can spray with the inside your grow. You can foliar spray, so if you're feeding the plants to the leaf by spraying, if you're spraying pesticides or something like that, you're completely safe. If you're in a greenhouse where the top of the greenhouse opens and some rain comes in, that these lights are going to continue to last. I think I covered cooler temperatures, premium top bend diodes, sturdy construction there. And then our company's been around since 1938. So when we put a 5-year warranty on it, we're still going to be in business in 5 years, you know, producing all sorts of lights. We make magnifying lights, facility lights, and desk lights. So that's kind of how our company started too, was in 1938, 39. They got a contract for the Army in World War II to produce all those like old school desk lights that you see that they use in like World War II movies. That's what Dazor did, and they got that contract. So all those lights were produced for the Army. And then our whole thing has just been build really high quality lights. It's nice because I run a lot of social media and the marketing stuff, that I get people that send me messages from antique shops of like a light that was produced in the 50s, and they tag Dazor lights, and so sometimes I'll actually share that on our story. If you guys add us on Instagram, it's at Dazor Lights. So yeah, quality. I think it's really important to us. We have Bluetooth models, and this is important with growers that have 2 lights, 4 lights, or anything above that. You're able to not have to climb through the plants in the canopy. You can sit there, and with the touch of a button, you can adjust the light. With the Bluetooth technology, you also get a lighting timer on there, so you don't have to plug the light into a timer. You just plug it directly into the wall, and you can control that all through your phone. We do customized power options. 120 volt comes standard with all of our boxes. So if you guys just order a light, it's going to come with light hangers and 120 volt cord automatically. If you want to customize it, where you have a 240 volt or 277 twist lock, meaning like a washer and dryer lock, it slips in and it locks. You're going to be using about half the amperage there with a 240, and you're going to lock that light into place. So if you're hanging it in a commercial facility and that light falls, that cord is holding on to that twist lock. We have smart driver technology, so our drivers automatically adjust to the change in amperage. So if you buy 120 volt, but then 2 years later you change your electrical in your house, you can actually just slip on a converter plug for about 10 bucks and plug that into the wall, and the driver is going to pick that up automatically. So you don't actually have to go and get a brand new cord. You just get a converter plug, plug it in. Any questions on that part? Bless you. So I think I covered most of the stuff. Triple check quality assurance on every unit, 5-year warranty, targeted PAR spectrum and quality of light being what's most important to production, and then more efficient photosynthesis. So the energy that you're paying in your electrical bill is going into the plant, and that is coming out as really nice, pretty bud, and you're getting a lot more of it. So again, if you have a pound that sells for $1,000, depending on where you're at, and you're producing 30% more, that's an extra $300 per pound. Now if you're pushing 2 pounds in a tent, that's an extra $600, right? If you're pushing 2 pounds in a tent and you sell that for $3,000, which I think is about the average of a price of a pound right now in the Midwest, then you're looking at an extra $1,800 each time you turn over. So that's $3,600 a year in 2 flowering cycles at 2 pounds per tent. So when you buy quality light and it lasts and it continues to last, you're getting your money back, you're getting really good product and things that you're happy to stand behind. If you guys have any issues, it's a big thing for us is that you guys can call us if you have any issues. If you have questions or you want to improve your grow, that's what we're here for as a whole. So we want to support you guys because your success means that we're doing the right thing too. So that's it. Thanks. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Cheers.